Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Carasoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Public Sector Tech Talk, Fortify Security and Compliance with ServiceNow Vault. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. Please note that all lines have been muted to reduce any kind of background noise during the presentation. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer by the end of the presentation or follow up with you offline. This webinar is being recorded, and a copy will be emailed to you. Just to tell you a little bit about Carasoft, we are a trusted government IT solutions provider supporting public sector organizations across federal, state, and local government agencies, including education and healthcare markets. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our speakers. Bree, the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about fortifying security and compliance with ServiceNow Vault. Just a reminder, often comes up, we might have some forward-looking statements. Please don't use those when making any of your purchasing decisions. So what we're going to go over today is kind of an overview of platform security and what do we mean when we're talking about platform security. And we're going to talk about sensitive data protection. And so we broke that down into three different ways of looking at your data. So the first one is knowing your data, the second is protecting your data, and then how can we restrict access to your data? And then we're going to talk about all of these different tools that we're going over today in the lens of the public sector. So I brought a rock star team with me today. So my name is Bree. I am a senior outbound product manager on our platform security team. I specialize mostly in the identity and authentication space. I have Bryce Halley with me, who's our platform data protection specialist, who also works on our ServiceNow Vault products. Jonathan Klein is one of our superheroes on the Office of the CISO security, Customer Security and Trust team. They're the trusted advisors that are brought in whenever you have security questions. And Mike Rohde is our deputy CISO. He spends most of his time talking to public sector customers. There's no one that knows this space better than him. So I'm excited to have everyone with me to help kind of talk about our security and compliance products. So let's jump into it. So we're going to give you an overview of platform security and what that means. So this slide has a lot on it. So I work on the platform and AI security team, and on this team, we have a combination of our out-of-the-box security products, as well as premium Vault products. And what we're going to talk about today is meeting various security requirements while helping you to kind of facilitate your ServiceNow roadmap. And it's going to be a combination of some of these platform security products that you're seeing, as well as some of our ServiceNow products in kind of a defense in-depth approach. I would love to go in depth on all of the products on this slide, but we only have 1 hour. So we're going to go through some highlights for you. So here we have different layers of security. At the bottom, when you're thinking about security, you should always be thinking about your hosting layer. Where are you hosting your ServiceNow application? Then you have your platform security layer on top of that. That is the types of things that you can configure out of the box. So when we're talking about identity and access management, key management framework, all of the awesome things that you can do with Security Center, data classification, which is one of the things we're going to touch on today. That's something that you have available to you today. And then we also have Guardian and AI Control Tower, which are brand new. If you haven't heard about them, we can definitely provide more information. And then we have, of course, in our yellow, we have our ServiceNow Vault products. Those are the products we're going to go into depth on a little bit more. So when I say Vault, what am I talking about? We're going to give you a quick overview on the slide, but then we're going to go dive into these products in a little bit more detail. So the Vault bundle, what it does essentially is it allows different organizations to demonstrate that they have the tools and that they're following the processes needed to comply with regulatory obligations at every single stage of the life cycle, from ingesting that data to storing the data to using the data, and then at the end, finally destroying that data. So it has 5 different capabilities in it. The first one is platform encryption. This allows you to prove that you follow those industry best practices when you're encrypting sensitive data, and most importantly, rotating those keys. This provides an additional layer of protection and helps guard you against insider threats, unauthorized access, and any data leakage that you might see with generative AI. And it doesn't get in the way of your ServiceNow workflows. And then data privacy, what it does is it simplifies that process of finding, classifying, and anonymizing that private information. It can search your environment for data that might be linked back into somebody's identity, and it can remove those values before you even hit the database. It can also anonymize sensitive data that's detected, like if you have like a credit card number or a social security number, and prevent any sensitive information from getting into your sub-productions where it might be exposed to any contractors or employees that shouldn't have full privilege. And speaking of privilege, we have zero trust access. What that does is it enforces least privilege access. Built with the zero trust framework in mind, it allows you to dynamically reduce the user's privileges based on how they're logging in, as well as protect the most sensitive tables. Log export service helps you gather real-time forensic quality logs, and you can use those for performance monitoring, trending analysis, but also for detecting security incidents, and most importantly, when you're doing incident response in the case that something does happen. This makes it much easier for you to get access to those logs and to retain them for auditing and incident response purposes. And then finally, code signing, which at a high level gives you greater assurance that the code running on your mid server has not been tampered with. So when we're talking about protective data, protecting your data, the first thing you need to know is what data do you have so that you can protect it. So we're going to go into a section we call Know Your Data. So when people think about data privacy, they're usually thinking about like GDPR and CCPA, compliance and regulations and audits and that sort of thing, but that kind of goes outside of the actual security value of this product. So there are certain concepts that we can agree on, and that is that you can't protect what you don't know about. It's easy to protect data in one place and then in many different places. And every record that you hold comes with a fractional amount of risk when it's added. And when you add all that up, it's a big liability. So data privacy helps with all three of these things by helping you define the sensitive data in your instance, to get rid of the information that you don't want in there, to redact the information that you don't need anymore, as well as keep information from getting cloned down into your non-prod instances. And then, of course, data privacy helps you comply with those global privacy regulations by helping with right to be forgotten requests. So data privacy in the lens of Vault is a bundle of two different capabilities. We have data discovery and data anonymization. And we also have some features that help you to better use your data classification capabilities. Just so you know, data classification is something that you have out of the box and you can start using today. It's already included with our platform. So one thing that's definitely true with any organization really is when you give somebody a text field, you cannot control what they're going to type into that field. They might type in their credit card number, be like, hey, I am trying to fill out this form. This is my name and this is my full social security number. When that information is now put into your system, you become responsible for it. So data discovery is what's going to help you with finding that information in your instance, and then you can decide what you want to do with it. So data privacy, it has a really critical role in managing that sensitive information across all your modules, whether you're using HR Service Desk, you're using CSM, you're using GRC, you're using ITOM, those modules all have sensitive data. And having an IT policy that says this is the type of information that you can or can't put in the system is just not sufficient in protecting that data, as many of you know. So what data privacy does is going to give you like a proactive and reactive control both to help you kind of detect that PII, the personally identifiable information. And if you have any protected health information, it can help you with those as well. So you can do that in real time, or you can schedule some scans. And once that information is found, you can now classify it and label it and handle it in the right way that you would for sensitive information. This will help you comply with any internal policies you have or any regulatory requirements. In this diagram, you can kind of see how the data is flowing between the different modules. And at the middle of it right here, you have data privacy, making sure that that information is not actually getting into those workflows. So part of it, again, is data discovery. The way that this works is with pattern-based discovery. Out of the box, we have 19 different patterns that will automatically look for, is this a credit card? Is this a social security number? Is this a date of birth? Or is this an email? You can also use custom patterns, and it can automatically look for things in a certain format. And this is what's going to come to you and say, this is sensitive information that I found, and this is where I found it. Now that you have that information, you can look at anonymizing it. This will take your sensitive information and it anonymizes it before it even hits the database. So if somebody's filling in a ticket and they go into that text field and they put in that sensitive information, we're going to swat it out of the way before it even hits your database. These can be customized for you so that it gives you better control of your data. And it also allows you to be, you can run this post clone. So if you're working in production and you want to clone down to sub prod, you can go in and you can run this job, and any sensitive information that you would maybe allow in production, but not sub production because you have third parties working in there, you can go ahead and remove that and have better control over the data that people outside of your company are seeing. So kind of a recap, data privacy helps you with like a three-pillar approach where we're discovering, classifying, which again, you can do today, and anonymizing your data. We're doing this to help prevent data from existing in your database before you actually become liable for it. This will absolutely help you meet some of those compliance standards that come around the data that you are going to have in your instance and how you treat it. And if you're looking at implementing AI, your AI is only as good as the data that you're using. So data privacy is really essential in making sure that you have control over the data that's actually being fed into your LLMs so we can prevent it from getting in there. So I'm going to turn things over to Jonathan, who's going to kind of give us some examples with these products of how are people actually out there using it and what has he heard in the field.
Hi, folks. In our first scenario, we just have a customer that wants to discover PII in their instance data. Um, Sensitive data means different things to different organizations. There's a lot of use cases out there. So this could really be used for any type of sensitive data. It doesn't have to be PII. It can be PHI. It can be NERC data for a regulated entity. If you're using SecOps, it can be vulnerability data or security incident data, for example. There's a million different possibilities. Um, but as Bree said, protecting sensitive data appropriately starts with knowing where that data is and applying a classification to it, so that you can verify that the appropriate protections are in place for that data. So Vault enables customers to discover data throughout the database in order to apply data classification that can be leveraged by some of the other capabilities we're going to see later. Next slide, please. Here, the customer is just looking to anonymize sensitive data. In this case, it's PII. As we previously discussed, it can be any kind of sensitive data. But customers often treat their dev and test environments as lower security zones. So often there's different identification and authentication capabilities being used, might be dropping some of the MFA, and there's different user communities. A prime example being developers, right? Not something you necessarily want in production, but in these lower environments, the developers are going to be there. So this capability allows you to, as part of the clone process from your production instance down to a lower environment, actually anonymize that sensitive data. It keeps the sensitive data from being exposed in those lower environments, which might have lesser security controls. Next one, please. And this is a pretty common scenario, and Bree already talked about this a little bit in terms of users putting sensitive data in locations where it shouldn't reside. You never know what a user is going to put in a free text field. Training on this kind of thing is only partly effective. So having the capability for real-time data anonymization gives you a way to address the use case of, how can we identify and remediate data that violates privacy protections? Keeping that sensitive data out of fields where they're not supposed to be prevents circumvention of security controls for that type of data. So this capability allows customers to maintain the intended protections on the sensitive data in terms of the ACLs that are in place, the protections that are in place that might be in addition to that, such as field encryption enterprise on particular fields. So the anonymization feature keeps the sensitive data from spreading throughout the system and provides an easy way that you can demonstrate, to compliance auditors, for example, that you have technical controls in place to prevent that kind of thing from happening. I'm going to hand it to Bryce, who's going to talk about platform encryption.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bryce Halley. I'm the platform data protection specialist for regulated markets in America. So First of all, just thank you, each of you. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us here today to learn more about how you can empower the security and privacy of your missions. Now, since we just explored data privacy, it's clear that a strong defense in depth approach starts with having visibility into your sensitive data. So now that you know what data you have on the platform, you can protect it appropriately based on its classification, starting with encryption and knowing what to encrypt. So encryption is the first thing that most customers think of when they start to up-level their security. Now, as a customer in our regulated clouds, you are definitely already one step ahead. And you might be sitting there thinking, isn't my data already encrypted? And the answer to that is yes. You have full disk encryption that is built into our shared responsibility model for all GCC and NSC customers. And that provides hardware level protection against the physical loss, theft, or improper disposal of the drive. So platform encryption is meant to add another layer to that defense in depth strategy with software encryption. So this ensures sensitive data remains secure even if unauthorized access occurs. Our platform encryption uses industry standard algorithms and it integrates seamlessly with ServiceNow workflows. It's comprised of two encryption tools, Cloud Encryption and Field Encryption Enterprise. So we'll start with Cloud Encryption, which is encryption at the database level. This means that all data that's stored in your instance at this level is encrypted at rest at the volume level. This is transparent to the application and has no impact on your system's performance. With cloud encryption, you control the key lifecycle with our key management framework, and you can use either ServiceNow managed or your own keys, and you can withdraw or resupply those keys for complete data control. So just to reiterate that, with cloud encryption, you have a control function to shut down your instance and make your data unreadable and unusable at any time. Now, because most access is at the application level, platform encryption also provides field level encryption. Now, this is role-based symmetric encryption for specific columns at runtime and at rest. So with data privacy that you just saw, you've identified which columns hold that sensitive data. And now with field encryption, you can encrypt it at both the app level and the database level, providing logical restrictions on data visibility within your instance. So field encryption has the same key management options as cloud encryption, and it's actually more flexible because you can have multiple keys encrypting different data. So you can encrypt fields and attachments in your HR tables with an HR key, and then encrypt security operations data with a SecOps key. So platform encryption has empowered our public sector customers to confidently move more sensitive workflows to the platform. Over to Jonathan, who will share more real-world use cases next.
Okay, so in this scenario, we have a customer that wants to provide PHI with extra protection as afforded by Field Encryption Enterprise. So as Bryce said, having the data classified allows for easy identification of the fields where you potentially might want to apply field encryption. It's not something that you're going to apply to all of the fields in the database, for example. This is for high value information. Field Encryption Enterprise not only encrypts the data, but allows you to specify which roles can see that data in unencrypted form. That's in addition to the data ACL, so another layer of control. For the highest sensitivity data, Field Encryption Enterprise provides encryption at the application layer. So that data is encrypted before it reaches the database. ServiceNow admins or infrastructure admins with access can only see an encrypted representation of the data. It also prevents the data from being used by Now Assist or AI agents if you're using those. So this can be used in combination with the ServiceNow Access Control plugin, and that allows customers final control over ServiceNow customer support access to their instances, where data could potentially be viewed in unencrypted form. So the combination of those, of encrypting at the application layer and controlling access to the application layer, is pretty powerful. Field Encryption Enterprise answers the question, how can we ensure that ServiceNow employees or insiders can't access our sensitive data? As Bryce mentioned, Field Encryption Enterprise uses the key management framework. This allows customers to provide their own keys and perform management actions against them, to rotate them, retire them, etc. But the keys are stored by ServiceNow in a key encryption hierarchy, and that hierarchy is rooted in a FIPS 140-2 Level 3 HSM and key management system. Next slide, please. Okay, this scenario is predicated on the customer needing to provide and manage the keys used to encrypt customer data. We do see use cases like this. Cloud encryption also utilizes the key management framework, just like Field Encryption Enterprise does. And cloud encryption has additional capabilities. So there's that ability to withdraw and resupply the encryption key. And withdrawing the key means that access to that data is going to be removed and the instances are going to shut down. Withdraw and resupply functionality for cloud encryption is a separate capability from Vault, and it is an additional cost option, just to be transparent. So withdrawing that key prevents all access to the data, right? We can't access it at ServiceNow. Customer can't access it. Third party can't access it. It is, locked down. In order to prevent additional operational risk from this, there's the ability to use quorum control with this. So that's where you can specify a number of administrators that have to agree that the key should be withdrawn, to prevent, a single admin or an insider threat from bringing down your instances. And now we're going to go to Bryce to discuss log export service.
Thanks, Jonathan. Log export service, or LES for short, is enabling seamless integration of our system, audit, and node logs into your enterprise security analytics systems. So it's meant as a turnkey service for customers to improve their security posture, detect threats, investigate incidents, improve your user experience, monitor for compliance, and perform IT troubleshooting. Manually ingesting logs into a SIEM can be hard. The logs can be very large. They come from different types of sources and instances, and those custom scripts need to be maintained, and they require their own compute resources. So LES uses Kafka. If you dig into our docs, you'll see Hermes, which is our ServiceNow name for this capability. But for those who are familiar with Kafka, we're the publisher, and customers can subscribe with their SIEM or with multiple tools. So Jonathan will discuss how customers are leveraging LES for improved security and performance.
Thanks, Bryce. It's a very typical use case for government customers to want to send all their instance logs, the audit logs that are being captured, to customer SIEM, right? In order to process that data in near real time, looking for items of interest, generating alerts, that sort of thing. So log export service provides the means to export and transport those logs using Kafka. And then you have them on your customer systems and can process them. And the other key capability here, and this is a big one for a lot of government agencies and contractors who work with government agencies, is the ability to retain that data, retain those audit logs for as long as you want. So if you're working with DoD, if you're working with DHS or NERC-CIP, they all have extended retention requirements. And so if you have that data, you can hang on to it for as long as you want, as long as you need in order to meet those requirements. Now passing it over to Bryce to discuss code signing.
Thanks, Jonathan. One last thing to note on LES as well. All customers have access to a free starter that's available and offers up to 500 gigs of log data every month. Now, larger deployments, you can purchase additional increments on a consumption basis to be fully transparent, but that starter is excellent for performance administration. So you can leave this call today, install the plugin from the store, and identify, monitor slow or long-running jobs and track table growth over time, for example. But moving on to code signing, this tool configures digital signatures to validate the authenticity and integrity of software and integrations that are on and through the MIT server. So what that means is code signing establishes a circle of trust in order to ensure that only authorized actions are performed. With it, unauthorized actions are blocked or flagged for admin review. So Jonathan will share how security teams are using this to prevent malicious code execution, even if unauthorized access is gained.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of you know what the mid server is. For those that don't, it's our management, instrumentation, and discovery server, and it's designed to interact with the customer instance in order to perform functions on the customer networks, things like asset discovery or executing scripts, where a point of presence is needed on those customer networks. So mid-server is often a source of customer code from customer concern from a security perspective, since it's going to be running commands against customer systems. Vault provides a capability to actually sign that code that will ultimately be moved to a production instance and be executed by a mid-server. The code is not signed on the production instance. The cryptographic key is used for signing or maintained elsewhere. That can be in a lockdown subprod with limited access using a circle of trust, as shown in the slide. There's also capabilities to do standalone code signing. So that's where the key is maintained on other customer system or customer controlled cloud system. So can be totally separate from any ServiceNow implementation. And what this allows you to do is prevent execution of the jobs on the mid server if they're not signed by the proper key or if the script has been altered since it was signed. So it provides a whole nother layer of control and security to address a pretty major customer concern regarding commands coming from the cloud and being executed in customer networks. So pretty big capability there. Bree is now going to discuss zero trust access.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, so yeah, this brings us to the third approach to our data security, which is about restricting access to that data. So I'm going to kind of start with an overview of authentication policies. A lot of you may know what some of these are, a lot of you may not. So I like to think of authentication as a roadmap. And whenever I get into conversations with customers, they kind of ask about how do I mature my authentication? They talk about zero trust access in the authentication lens. So let's see what that kind of looks like. We start with a global blocking policy. A lot of you may already be using this, and this is where you just have an all or nothing approach. So if you're accessing my ServiceNow instance and you're off my network, you're not even going to see ServiceNow load. You're going to see a 403 or a 404 page. So you just cannot get in. So since this global blocking policy occurs before the point of authentication, you aren't able to make any different decisions about whether this person can come in or allow any exceptions, because it's just all or nothing. So once you have that need for those dynamic policies, that's when you can move into post-authentication context, which is part of our adaptive authentication, which is an out-of-the-box solution that we have that you can start using today. This is where you move that decision point for authentication to the actual authentication process. So you hit the ServiceNow page, you go to log in, and then you can make decisions based off of different factors, such as role or group. So you can say something like, I am off the network, but I'm part of this high privilege role or this backup role. So I can get in, but if somebody else is accessing off the network, then they can't. This gives you a level of flexibility that you just can't get with the global blocking policy. Something I like to mention is session validation context. This is also part of adaptive authentication, and you can use this today. This is where you can set it up so it's going to look for changes during each request that happens in that session. So you can say, I only want people to log in this IP range. And every time you make a request, it's going to see, are you still in that range? And if you're not, it's going to kick you off. So if you're at the office and you're doing something, you close your laptop, you go to the Starbucks down the street, it's going to see that you've now changed networks and it's going to kick you off. So this helps you with that zero trust framework as well. And then if you want to fit that full maturity, this is where you have zero trust access. Of course, we don't want people to access the ServiceNow instance when they're at home or on an untrusted device. But as you mature in your ServiceNow usage, you're going to run into some workflows where maybe that's not the case anymore. Maybe you have Employee Center or you have HR Service Desk, And you want your employees to be able to submit for PTO or check their balance or see what vacations are coming up. See what are your company holidays. There's all types of things. Maybe their laptop's broken, they can't even get on the network and they need a way to let you know. So Zero Trust Access gives you that decision point again during authentication, but instead of just saying you can come in or not, it's going to give you reduced access. And this gives you much more dynamic access when you're using sensitive use cases. So when we talk about Zero Trust Access, we're talking about this product. It's called Zero Trust Access. We know we have Zero Trust framework. The difference is that the framework is an approach to security where we eliminate the implicit trust of users, applications, and devices. And if anyone's requesting access, we're just going to assume that they're malicious until their credentials are verified. And even then, we're still skeptical. So we're granting the minimum access that their role requires. What the Zero Trust Access product does is it's going to give your users different levels of access based on how they're logging in, where they're logging in from. It can check that they are who they say they are still, even within a session. It's a policy product, and we have two different types of policies. So we have session-based policies. That's going to check you are who you say you are at the time of login, and then make that decision if you're in or not, or if you're in, you're going to reduce your access. And then we have something called continuous authentication, which just came out in Yokohama. This is going to prompt the user to re-authenticate or go through a step-up MFA before they can access your sensitive tables. So I kind of mentioned adaptive authentication before and Zero Trust Access, but how does that work in a more technical detail? I like to pull up this graphic here. This shows how adaptive authentication works in relationship to ZTA. So everything you can see in white, those are the things you can do in adaptive authentication today. You can make policies based off of the trusted mobile app, how they're logging in. If they're using just like a UI login, if they're using SSO, you can go based off roles and groups. And then you can say, yeah, you can come in. No, you can't come in. Yes, you can come in only if you do step up MFA. With Zero Trust Access, you have unlocked two new filter criterias. So you have geolocation. So you can say if this user is logging in, that's fine, unless they're in this country, or this user can only log in from the United States. So it will you can set up a policy to reduce their access if they're on vacation in another country, for example, or just help block some foreign countries from being able to access altogether. And then identity provider attributes is very powerful. So what that does is kind of lets you tie into the attributes that you're already collecting through your identity provider. So let's say you're using Okta, and when you have your login through Okta, you have an attribute that you're collecting for trusted devices. So you can say this person's logging in and they're on a trusted device. They can come in, they can't come in, or again, you can say they can come in, I know it's them, but since they're not on a trusted device, we're going to lower their access. And you can also do things like risk score if that's something that you are collecting. So you have all of these filter criteria on the left to create some really robust security policies. And then the biggest thing with Zero Trust Access, again, is this allow with reduced access. So if you are not letting people in and they can't do certain workflows because you are afraid of them having access to that sensitive tables, maybe you want to look at doing something like this. So you're going to allow with reduced access. So if somebody's logging in and they're logging in and they are at work and they're on their trusted device and they are an ITIL admin, you can make it so that, let's say they go home, they're on their personal device, they're on their personal network. You're going to let them log in, but you're going to give them just basic user roles. So what it does is it removes the roles or it removes the groups or limits to roles or groups for that specific policy for that specific user. It doesn't make actual changes to the sys user table. It just does it for that specific session. So if they go back into the office and they log in, nothing changes. They'll have full access. And so it's like they have two different personas. This is a really good use case that I like to mention too. If you are working with yourself, with your team, with someone at ServiceNow, and you're thinking, hey, I want to pull in the sensitive workload, but I think I need multiple instances because my instance is public facing, or I want to keep mine locked down. We want a public facing one. Maybe you're dealing with internal users and pre-hires and alumni. If that sounds familiar, this is a product you might not have heard of that you should totally look into, because that fixes your problems. With continuous authentication, like I said, this just came out in Yokohama. So once you get to Yokohama, highly recommend you guys look into this. it works by creating a high assurance session to, again, so we can verify, are you who we think you are? And we want to make super sure before you access our high privileged assets. So when you log in, when you have continuous authentication on, when you log in for the first 5 minutes, you just logged in, it's most likely you. So we're going to let you do everything you need to access any high privilege assets, no problem. Now you've been logged in for 30 minutes. You want to access a sensitive asset, maybe like an employee table that has sensitive information like social security numbers in it. We're going to make you re-authenticate or do step-up MFA just to prove that it's still you. This can prevent against session hijacking, or even if you have an employee, or no, we're not supposed to do it, that was at that Starbucks down the street and left their laptop open. This will at least reduce the amount of damage that a attacker can do once they have access to your ServiceNow instance. So I'm going to turn this over again to Jonathan, who's going to share some scenarios that he's seen.
I love zero trust access. I think it's got amazing capabilities, but there's some complexity there. So we're going to look at three different customer scenarios. The first one is a pretty common use case, right? We have remote workers, and this is something that we pretty much all face, right? Um, but the customer wants to reduce access to sensitive data if the user is not on a trusted network or is not on a GFE or corporate laptop. So obviously we're trying to limit possible exfiltration of sensitive data. And as Brianna discussed, the zero trust architecture is built on top of and enhances adaptive authentication in a customer instance. So criteria from adaptive authentication, such as source IP, can be combined with identity provider attributes, such as information about the laptop that's in use by the customer or by the user. And then you add the Vault capability to dynamically reduce the access. So turning off roles for a particular scenario where a user is not on a trusted network or not on a trusted laptop. And then the next time they log in from trusted devices, those capabilities are re-enabled. Pretty powerful. Okay, so Vault also adds the capability to block or allow access based on geolocation. So if your access to your instance is only needed from the US, why allow access from anywhere? Very simple capability here to select countries and allow or disallow access. You can do that with adaptive authentication capabilities to limit source IPs, but then you have to manage those IP ranges. I wouldn't really be interested in trying to manage IP ranges for the United States or even for something like Guam, right? Crazy. But geolocation uses a service that ties IP addresses to locations, and that's constantly updated and allows you quick and easy capability to limit or allow access based on geolocation. And then finally, we have zero trust architecture. Well, zero trust architectures in general use least privilege access and strict user authentication to avoid the assumed trust pitfall, right? In order to make sure we know who you are and what your access should be. But customers need ServiceNow to fit into their larger zero trust architecture. And as Bree mentioned, there's capabilities to perform continuous authentication. So you can re-verify a user authentication when users try to access sensitive data, for example. This is another example where having that data classified and labeled helps protect the data because you can easily apply these controls. So the continuous re-authentication allows policies that will require re-authentication before accessing sensitive data or enforce periodic re-authentication or step-up authentication. And that can leverage your own customer identity provider MFA. It can leverage your own identity provider performing SSO, It can also use step-up authentication with the ServiceNow native instance capabilities to do MFA. So there's a bunch of MFA methods there that you can easily leverage. So a lot of capabilities to do that and make sure that the user is re-authenticating in an appropriate time frames before or when they access sensitive data. That pretty much wraps up the customer scenarios that we're going to discuss today. Now Mike Rohde is going to talk about Vault in the public sector.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Rohde. I'm our Deputy CISO for Public Sector at ServiceNow, and I really focus on overseeing and ensuring that we are securing our public sector clouds. We could jump into the next slide. So I want to touch on the multiple deployment options that we have for Vault in the ServiceNow clouds as well as self-hosted environments. Um, First, we've got our ServiceNow Commercial Cloud, where I'd say the majority of our global customers are located. This is a great option for those customers that are outside of regulated markets, and all of the full functionality and features of Vault are available in this cloud. In addition to the ServiceNow hosted commercial cloud, we do offer other options through Microsoft Azure, AWS, and GCP. If you've got additional regulatory requirements, we've got multiple regulated environments. So on the US federal side, we've got a FedRAMP High and DoD Impact Level 4 environment called our Gov Community Cloud, or GCC. For our DoD customers requiring Impact Level 5 authorization, we offer our National Security Cloud. Both are fully logically and physically separate from our commercial environments and are fully approved by the US federal government. In addition to those regulated markets, we do offer other regional regulated markets in the EU, Australia, Singapore, and the UAE. Finally, if none of these cloud environments are able to meet your needs, we do offer a self-hosted option or an on-premise option where you are able to take our platform and load it onto your own infrastructure, or you can load it onto an infrastructure as a service provider that you're using. Typically, we see this in some of our customers that are dealing with classified information will go this route. But bottom line here is Vault is available in each of these deployment options. Slide. All right, so for those in the federal government side, as of December of last year, ServiceNow is now listed on the CDM approved products list. CDM is a continuous diagnostics and monitoring program. And specifically, we are covering the capability areas of identity and access management, as well as data protection management. Next slide. And as Bree and Jonathan just covered, Vault does help our customers meet their zero trust initiatives. So specifically, we are covering at least parts of 6 out of the 7 DoD zero trust pillars, specifically around user, device, apps and workloads, data, automation, orchestration, visibility, and analytics. While there's not a single tool that can meet all of your zero trust needs, ServiceNow does meet quite a few of the areas or provides capabilities in quite a few of these areas to help you in your zero trust journey. Next slide. And to kind of wrap things up here, we do provide a variety or a wealth of resources that are available to our customers. So specifically, many white papers and documentation around each of the areas that we've covered today. And then if we go to the next slide, we also have our Vault landing page where you can find much of this information. We also have online demos that you can go in and explore at your leisure. And then lastly, the best way to get in touch with us if you'd like additional information or security briefing is get in touch with your account team. They'll bring in experts like Bree and Bryce and Jonathan to really talk through specific use cases, specific requirements around what your need is and what your desire is, and help determine what the best solution is. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody for joining, and I'll pass it back over to the Carousel team.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to thank all of our participants as well as our speakers for being with us today. We hope the information you received during this webinar has been helpful. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to reach out. Thank you again and have a great day.